This is Terms of Service. I'm Claire Duffy. I'm here with Danielle Boyer. Danielle is an inventor and educator who calls herself a girl who builds robots and gives them all away. Her latest invention is the Scobot, an interactive robot that doubles as a tool to preserve Indigenous language and traditions, including her own. Today, we're going to get into how that works, and I'm going to ask Danielle how technology can help us both learn and preserve endangered languages. Hi, Danielle. Thanks for being here.
Buju, hello. Thank you so much for having me.
So you're in your early 20s. You've already built a lot of robots in your career. Take me back to the beginning. When did you first interact with a robot or get interested in robotics?
Honestly, I'd have to go way back to the stuff that I would watch on TV or read in comic books. My little sister and I were so obsessed with reading Iron Man comics or watching the Wall-E movie or things like that. We'd see robots be presented in this cool way. And we were always like, I want to do that too. I remember we were looking around for a way to be able to build a robot. And there was a local class for it, but it cost $500 to be able to participate. I grew up under the poverty line. And so that opportunity was not accessible to us. It was really discouraging at first.
So you now run an organization called the STEAM Connection, which focuses on making technical education more accessible to youth through robotics specifically. Talk about why teaching robotics and technical skills to young people and making that accessible is important to you.
Yeah, I think that robots are like superpowers because you can learn so many things through making them. You can learn electrical engineering skills. You can learn mechanical engineering skills. You can learn coding. And it's all in a project-based way. And so for me, I first started out getting into accessible robots and building robot kits that cost less than $20 to make and went to kids for free. And I've sent out 20,000 of those robots now because I believe that it's so important that students have access to these skills, because when you get ahead in science and tech, you can have access to so many amazing career opportunities, and you can also get involved in the world of technology to help solve problems for your community.
Tell me a little bit more about what kinds of robots you build or robotics kits that you're sending out to kids to interact with.
My first robot, its name is Every Kid Gets a Robot, or ECHR. It has a crazy acronym. It's like a little remote controlled car. And basically what the students do is they build it and design it from scratch, and they can just go and chase their pets around with a robot and design things and build things. And it makes science and tech fun and approachable, especially for young students, especially for girls. And the goal was that there should be no barrier to entry to STEM, especially cost.
Mm-hmm. And tell me about your newer robot, Scobot. What kind of function does that serve?
The Scobot is my baby. So the Scobot is a language revitalization robot. My language is called Anishinaabe-Moan, and it's an endangered Indigenous language. So I'm Anishinaabe from the Sioux tribe, which is in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And many Indigenous languages are endangered. UNESCO said that by the year 2050, only 20 Indigenous languages will be left. That's soon. That's within all of our lifetimes. That's really, really scary. And when you lose your language, you lose such a key component of your culture and of your ways. I feel so much fear because it's the way that we communicate about the world around us, is the way that we tell stories. And the fact that we've seen so much loss, especially after COVID and the loss of elders and things like that, that's a really scary thing. Language is really important. And for me, I love robots, right? So I was like, I wonder if there's a way that we could bring these things together to make language learning accessible and fun for kids, right? And so I kind of started on that journey to build a language revitalization robot that you can actually speak back and forth in Anishinaabe-Moan, and it speaks in children's voices.
Okay. So I want to hear a little bit more about how it works and how you built it. But tell me a little bit more about your relationship with your language and your culture. Is Anishinaabe-Moan something that you grew up speaking?
So I didn't grow up speaking it fluently. My grandma fluently speaks it. But in our community, generational language loss is very rapid. So a lot of our grandparents speak it, and then our parents speak a little bit of it, and then we speak even less of it. It's a really scary thing to see how fast you can lose a language in your community and how few fluent speakers there are. In many of our communities, it's only a handful of people. And so the desire to build my robot and, bring language revitalization into kind of like a tech and robotics centered space was based around that experience of mine of learning my language and my sister learning our language and us learning it together and being like, wow, this is really difficult. There aren't a lot of resources. And I believe that all of our youth should be learning our languages.
So give me the Cliff's Notes version of how you built the Scobot. Talk to me about what went into that process.
So one of my mentors is a speech language pathologist. So basically we got together and we were inspired by Talking Elmo.
I love it.
Right? We saw Talking Elmo on the shelf at the store. And we were like, if Elmo can talk, why can't he speak indigenous languages? Right? Like, it's not fair that our youth don't have toys like this to be able to learn from. It would be so exciting to see a Anishinaabe toy. So that was kind of like the spark, right? Mm-hmm. And so I got together with some of my students and we started like sketching designs and things like that. And ultimately it looks like kind of like a little kitty cat. It's a little like animal-like droid. It sits on your shoulder. And we have different woodland animal variants, basically like Makwa, which is bear. So a little bear robot. We have a rabbit robot, things like that, inspired by woodland animals that come from my homelands, things like that. And so basically it's a cute, adorable little robot that the kids can talk back and forth with.
And how does it work? Talk to me about if I'm a kid and I have gotten one of these, what does my interaction look like?
So basically what we do is we bring the robots into classrooms and the students build the robots themselves, which is really exciting. Okay. Like they get to design their own aspects of it. They get to wire the robot. And then from there, how you interact with it is you speak to it. It recognizes your speech. It puts speech to text. It takes the text and it syncs it to an audio file. So if I say hello to it, it's going to say hello, and then it's going to sync to the hello file, which in my language is Ani Buju. So it's going to say Ani Buju back to me because I said hello to it. And it's going to say it in an audio file. So basically it's not like a synthetic speech or anything like that. It's all pre-recorded. Okay. And so, basically you speak to it, it understands what you're saying and replies in an audio file.
Got it. So it is going to sort of say whatever you've said in Anishinaabe back to you.
Yeah, and it's also going to give context to pronunciation and how to say the word and meaning behind the words.
You mentioned that the Scobot uses artificial intelligence. How does that work exactly? Like what parts of it are using AI?
Yeah, so the AI is in basically the speech recognition component of it. So when I say hello to it and it takes text to speech and then takes the text in syncing it to the audio file, that's the AI component. So basically it's in the functionality of it. It's not involved in the indigenous languages in of itself, right? Not in the speaking method of it, things like that. I think that separation is important when we're navigating AI in these spaces. But yeah, it's mostly for the functionality. And so you can actually talk back and forth with it.
Okay, interesting. Talk to me about the bigger vision here. Is it just to sort of help kids learn more vocabulary in this language?
The basic goal around it is for our youth to be able to introduce themselves first and foremost in our languages, because that's really important for your sense of belonging and things like that. The other component of it that I'm really passionate about is the documentation part of it. So making sure that my language is recorded and well documented, but in a way that's not being exploited by companies that are like not from our communities, because that happens a lot, especially AI companies.
Yeah. How did you go about that piece of it, collecting the recordings that would be used for the robot?
I started out with my grandma, actually. The first robot was in her voice, right? And it was so fun. But as we were kind of making the robots, and I say we as in my organization and team, we were like, it would be so much more relatable and inspiring to the students if we had it in children's voices. And so there were a few language keepers that I knew of, and their grandchildren were the ones who we first started recording with.
So they taught their grandkids how to say the words, and then the kids made the recordings.
Yes.
Very cool. How many things can it say?
Oh my goodness, it could say a lot of things. We've been recording so much, so you can have like full-on conversations with the robot. The one thing that definitely limits us, and sometimes I get comments of, it's people want us to do like synthetic speech or like a robot voice. I was like, no, like languages are living things. It has to be handled with so much care. Like even language learning should never happen purely with a robot or on your phone. It should always happen with a community member. So this is just aiding to it and making something that helps inspire our youth and also helps inspire documentation.
And are you continuing to train the Scobot over time? Like, what are the next steps for this project?
Yeah, so basically I took 3 years to develop an ethical AI framework, because we use AI within the robot, to say, how should this happen and should it happen at all? And so basically we sat with community members, we sat with youth and said, hey, when we're recording things, how should we go about this? Should we release things to the public? Should we have the synthetic speech? How involved should artificial intelligence be? Should we integrate different products like Duolingo? What does that look like?
Yeah.
So we sat there and we talked about it and the ethics behind it, because there have been non-Indigenous organizations that have gone to our communities, recorded language resources with us, and then copyrighted them and then tried to sell them back to Indigenous communities in North America. That is horrifying. And they've even developed language learning models from OpenAI. There's one called Whisper, and they taught it the Maori language. And so basically through data scraping, right? They just pulled information off the web without regard, is it right or is it wrong? And didn't ask any of the community members. So there's software out here teaching Maori, but without the soul of Maori.
Yeah, it sounds like, first of all, there are some people in Silicon Valley who could learn from your approach here, like the very thoughtful approach before further development of the technology. So what did you land on in terms of the pillars of that ethical framework and how you've decided to move forward?
Basically, what we landed on is that the people who record the language resources keep that. Our communities keep those resources. They're not for public consumption. They're not for sale. And I think it's important that if you're using a technology that could potentially be harmful, you need to keep it very localized and you need to keep it moving slow, if that makes sense. Another thing is that we developed all of the software internally. So it's not a wrapper of another software that someone else developed. We made everything from scratch. So the voice recognition, everything like that, the text to speech, we made that. And so by making everything locally and keeping it locally run, we're able to have a lot of control over the impact of the software. We're able to say, we know the environmental impact of what's happening because we have it running personally off of our computers. And so by doing that, it really helps us have control over a concept called our data sovereignty. So basically having control and ownership over our own data and information. There is a lot of power in that.
Sort of continuing from that, what do you see in terms of the broader state of language preservation technology right now? What does the ecosystem look like?
The ecosystem scares me a little bit, because we're seeing from a lot of large companies that work in like language learning and things like that, and even Indigenous languages, they're integrating AI pretty rapidly and with a pretty heavy hand. And oftentimes, I think a lot of companies integrate like AI chats or things like that because they want to save time or money, or not necessarily bring in language keepers or professionals or experts who can help with those things, right? It's expensive. And so I think people are cutting corners, and that scares me a lot.
You've touched on this, but there is a lot of talk about using AI as a tool to preserve endangered languages, teaching the AI the language so that then it can, learn as you interact with it. have conversation with people who are trying to learn the language. Talk to me about why that approach worries you.
So that approach worries me because of the corporations that own the software that people are training with our languages. When you give away that information to these companies, they can do whatever they want with it. And I've also seen a lot of the approach, especially when it comes to Indigenous languages, be very without regard for accuracy. In my mind, this is a very similar thing to when companies have literally come into our communities and recorded with us and then copyrighted things behind our back. What's the difference now with this? We're out here helping them be more accurate when we have no control over the outcome. We need to help train and develop more people in our communities who are in software and in technology so that we can develop our own solutions. Because as soon as it gets out of our hands, that's a very, very dangerous thing.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you felt like there was a way that you'd like to see big tech get involved in this effort to preserve endangered languages, or if there's more that you wish they would do in this space. Do you see an opportunity for partnership, or would you rather it just be the communities themselves being the drivers of this?
So it depends on the company. It depends on the technology. I know that's a very general answer, but I'm going to give an example. With one of my students, we developed an augmented reality learning app. So basically you can place like plants in the environments around you and learn about the plants and their names and stuff like that. And we actually had a partner for that, and it was Snapchat, because they do really cool things with filters and things, right? Mm-hmm. And so they were a great partner because they let us do whatever we wanted, but they gave us the back end and the technology to be able to have the software to develop what we needed to develop. And so I think things like that is very useful when companies let you do what you want to do and what is best for your community, but they give you the resources and the software to be able to create your own things. I think that depends on the ethics of the company, but I also know that we can develop these things ourselves as long as we have the right skills.
Yeah, it sounds like from what you're saying, like the key piece is the community involved? Is the community informed in terms of how exactly their data is going to be used? And do they have a choice about that? How do you hope to see language preservation technology evolve in the future?
Right now, the technology is in the hands of people who are not Indigenous. I see a lot of people who say that they're data sovereignty experts and have even gone to school for it and speak on behalf of Indigenous communities, but they are not from North American Indigenous communities. And so I want to see that change. I want to see the space actually reflect our communities more accurately. I want to see more representation for our language keepers, and I want to see less of a skew on academia and more on our community members and our elders who are out here doing the work. I think that that's so important that we have more of a balanced representation of who's actually in our spaces. And once that happens, I think tech and I think academia within language revitalization will start to look different.
Yeah. What does your grandmother think of the Scobot project?
She thinks they're so adorable.
Yeah.
I remember introducing them to her for the first time. I was like, yeah, it's here. I've been talking about it forever. Here it is.
Yeah.
And we had the first iteration. They were cute. Later, I showed her ones that were actually done with a Anishinaabe woodland artist. So they have woodland floral faces and are inspired by animals and things. I then showed her those and she's like, finally, those look Anishinaabe. And so it was good to see the progression with her and for her to be as excited about it as I am.
Talk to me about just her reaction to knowing so many more children are now going to be able to interact with the language.
I remember when I first introduced the robot, I was wearing the robot and I brought it to a powwow and I was like, how are kids going to react to this? And I saw babies looking up at the robot.
Huh.
And I was like, oh my goodness, it's working. like the children see it as a face or something to react to or a character that they can respond to. And that to me was like, there's potential here. I got excited.
Yeah.
And then other little kids were running up and asking if it could play like Spider-Man music and things like that. And so to me, that was the moment that it clicked for me and also my family of like, hey, there's potential here to actually do a lot of good with the robots.
If people want to hear what endangered indigenous languages sound like, maybe learn some words, how do you recommend they go about that?
Following people online is a really good start. So there's one hashtag I want to encourage people to look into. It's called Ojibwe Word of the Day. So my language is Anishinaabe, but it's also known as Ojibwe. And so you can learn exciting phrases and funny words. And I always encourage people to start with that, whether it's actually your language or not. Like, it's really cool to learn about.
Nice. And if there are educators who are listening who say, I'm really interested in trying to understand how I could use this technology in my classroom or something like that, is there a good way for people to learn about the work that you're doing?
Yeah, so people can learn more at www.steamconnection.org. And on there is more information about all of the robots I mentioned when we were chatting today, the affordable ones, the language ones, things like that, and basically how to get science and tech into the classroom. So always check those things out.
Thank you so much for talking to us. This was really interesting.
Thank you. So thank you in my language is miigwech. So miigwech.